Today I'm going to present the movie Den of Thieves, a 2018 American crime. The film opens late at night on an empty stretch of road outside Los Angeles. A convoy of dark SUVs suddenly surrounds an armored transport truck. The men inside the SUVs are masked, dressed in full tactical gear, and armed with military-grade rifles. This is the crew led by Ray Merriman, a former Marine, together with his closest men, Levy, Bosco Mack, and a quieter member named Donnie. The operation looks less like a street robbery and more like a special forces raid. The men communicate with hand signals and short-coded radio calls, wrap heavy chains around the truck's rear doors open. Everything is going according to plan until a nervous security guard inside the truck panics. He drops something. The noise is enough to startle the crew, and within seconds a gunfight breaks out. In the confusion, Bosco shoots and kills one of the guards. The crew finishes forcing the truck open, grabs what they came for, and speeds off into the night, leaving the scene in chaos behind them. The opening minutes of the film do not waste time on introductions or explanations. The audience is dropped straight into the middle of an already highly rehearsed criminal operation, which immediately signals the tone of the entire movie. This is going to be a story about professionals, not amateurs, and the audience will need to pay close attention to understand exactly who each of these masked men is and what role they play within the group. As the crew regroups afterward, Merriman turns furiously on Bosco. He reminds him that killing was never supposed to happen, that every unnecessary death draws more police attention and puts the entire long-term plan at risk. Bosco tries to defend himself, saying the guard reached for a weapon. This short but intense argument establishes Merriman as a disciplined, control-obsessed leader, someone who thinks several steps ahead and hates when anything happens that he did not authorize. The next morning, Los Angeles County Sheriff's investigators arrive at the crime scene, led by Detective Nicholas Big Nick O'Brien, played by Jared Butler. Nick heads an aggressive, semi-independent unit nicknamed the Regulators, known across the department for bending and sometimes breaking the rules to get results. When his team finally forces open the truck's cargo hold, they find it completely empty. There is no money, nothing of real value at all. Nick stands there confused. Why would a crew risk gunfire and a killing to steal a truck carrying nothing? He immediately senses that this robbery was not really about the truck itself, but about something else. Perhaps a rehearsal or a way to test how quickly police respond. Before following Nick further into the investigation, the film takes a moment to show how his unit actually operates day to day. The Regulators are introduced as a small, tight-knit group of detectives who work almost like a private task force inside the larger sheriff's department, feared by criminals and respected, sometimes uneasily, by other officers because of how effective and how aggressive their methods are. We see them joking with each other during a stakeout, teasing Nick about his personal life, and then instantly switching into serious disciplined professionals the moment a lead comes in. Digging through his network of informants and old case files, Nick's investigation leads him to a name, Donnie, a bartender working at a bar downtown. On paper, Donnie looks harmless. No serious criminal record, a steady job, a quiet lifestyle. But Nick's instincts, sharpened by years of chasing Merriman's crew, tell him that this harmless bartender is connected somehow. He decides to pay Donnie a visit personally. Nick and his team find Donnie leaving the bar and grab him off the street, throwing him into the back of an unmarked police vehicle without any formal arrest. Inside the vehicle, Nick interrogates him aggressively, using intimidation and even physical pressure, a method far outside standard police procedure, but typical of how the Regulators operate. Nick asks Donnie directly what he knows about Merriman, about the empty truck, and about what the crew is really planning. Eventually, under this pressure, Donnie breaks and tells Nick something huge. Merriman's crew is preparing to rob the Federal Reserve Bank of Los Angeles, and the job is set for the following Friday. He explains that the target is around $30 million in old worn-out bills, money that has already had its serial numbers deleted from the federal computer system because it is scheduled to be shredded and destroyed within days. Donnie points out that, technically, once this money is marked for destruction, nobody will ever notice it missing, since officially it will cease to exist. This detail is crucial because it explains exactly why the crew chose this specific type of money as their target instead of ordinary cash sitting in a vault. Because Nick does not have enough hard evidence to formally charge him, Donnie is eventually released, apparently free to walk away. Shortly after, the film shows in more detail his plan depends heavily on Donnie. On the day of the heist, Donnie will enter the Federal Reserve Building disguised as a Chinese food delivery driver, since bank staff are used to seeing delivery workers coming and going without much scrutiny. To prepare, Merriman has already secretly hidden a bag containing disguised materials and tools inside the ceiling of one of the building's bathrooms, days before the actual robbery, so Donnie can retrieve it quietly on the day itself without carrying anything suspicious through security. This reveals just how long Merriman has been preparing this operation. Nothing about it is improvised. While the criminal plot develops, the film also follows Nick's crumbling home life. His wife, Debbie, discovers that he has been unfaithful to her. Hurt and furious, she confronts him, packs up their two daughters and leaves, immediately filing for divorce. This subplot runs in parallel with the investigation and shows a very different side of Nick. At work, he is confident and intimidating, but at home, his choices have completely destroyed the one relationship that gave his life balance. Sometime later, Nick happens to run into Donnie at a restaurant. Merriman and several crew members are seated nearby, watching closely. Nick walks over and greets Donnie in a friendly, almost casual tone. But the subtext is clear. He wants Donnie, and by extension Merriman, to know that he is still paying close attention to them. It is a quiet scene, but full of tension, almost like two poker players eyeing each other across a table. This scene shows that even within the crew, trust is fragile, and Donnie is treated as the most expendable, least respected member of the group, something that becomes deeply ironic once the twist is revealed later. In a lighter, almost humorous scene right afterward, we see a different side of Levi. His teenage daughter is getting ready for a school dance, and when the boy who is picking her up arrives at the door, Levi pulls him aside and introduces him, quite deliberately, to Merriman and the rest of the crew who are hanging around the house. The intimidating presence of these armed, dangerous men is clearly meant as a silent warning: behave respectfully with my daughter tonight. This small domestic moment humanizes the criminals, reminding the audience that these men have families, routines, and normal daily concerns outside of their criminal life. Nick, sinking further into alcohol and frustration over his failing marriage, shows up uninvited and clearly drunk at a small family gathering held at his sister-in-law's house. Debbie is there with her new boyfriend. Nick causes an embarrassing scene in front of everyone, angrily signs the divorce papers on the spot, and gets into a heated confrontation with Debbie's new partner, before being told firmly to leave. This is presented as Nick's emotional low point in the film, the moment where the audience sees just how much his obsession with work and his personal flaws have cost him. Kicked out of the family gathering, Nick heads to a strip club to drown his sorrows even further. There he meets a stripper, and without thinking too much about it, goes home with her. What Nick does not realize is that this woman has actually been hired by Merriman specifically to get close to him, gain access to his phone, and quietly gather information about how the police investigation is progressing. This is a clever, almost chilling move on Merriman's part. He is not just planning a robbery, he is actively running surveillance on the very detective trying to stop him, using Nick's own personal weaknesses against him. Around this point, the film gives the audience a bit more context about why Merriman's crew trusts him so completely and follows his lead without. Several of the men served together in the military, and others knew each other from high school sports teams, which explains the tight, almost brotherly loyalty inside the group. Merriman is shown as someone who commands respect through discipline and results, not fear alone. His crew genuinely believes he has the knowledge and connections needed to pull off something as ambitious as robbing the Federal Reserve, even though the film never fully explains how he first learned so much about the bank's internal procedures. This gap is significant because after the twist, the audience realizes that this knowledge may have actually come from Donnie in the first place, filtered through Merriman so it would look like his own expertise. As the day of the real operation approaches, the film shows the crew training intensively, running drills, rehearsing timing down to the second, going over building blueprints, and practicing quick change disguises. It becomes clear that Merriman has designed a two-part strategy: a loud, violent, highly visible robbery at a separate bank meant purely as a distraction, and a quiet, careful infiltration of the true target, the Federal Reserve, carried out mainly through Donnie. Nick's team, meanwhile, is also shown preparing and gearing up, believing they are finally closing in on stopping the crew's next move, though they do not yet know exactly where or when it will happen. The day finally arrives. Friday allows. Merriman's crew storms into a local bank, identified in some accounts as the Pico River Savings and Loan, taking employees and customers hostage. Merriman speaks directly to police negotiators outside, demanding $10 million in a helicopter within 1 hour, projecting total confidence and control the entire time. Outside, Nick and his team surround the building immediately, absolutely convinced that this loud, dramatic robbery is the big one they've been racing to stop. To prove he's completely serious and to stop police from attempting any kind of tactical entry, Merriman makes a brutal decision. He executes one of the hostages in cold blood in front of the others. It is a shocking, calculated act of violence, not born from panic, but from cold, strategic thinking. Merriman needs the police outside to believe that any wrong move will cost more innocent lives, buying his crew the time they need to finish the job inside. Inside the bank, the crew moves quickly and efficiently, breaking into the vault and gathering everything they can before police can organize any kind of assault. They escape cleanly, slipping away before Nick's forces can close in, reinforcing, falsely, the idea that this was indeed the true target of the entire operation, and that the crew has now successfully pulled off their big score. While all of this noise and violence is unfolding at the decoy bank, pulling every police resource in the city toward it, the real operation is quietly taking place miles away at the Federal Reserve building. This sequence is filmed in a completely different rhythm from the loud, chaotic bank robbery. It is slow, quiet, and tense in a very different way, built entirely on the fear that at any second, someone might notice something is wrong. Using the tools from the hidden bag, Donnie makes his way into the restricted area where the old, unmarked bills are stored, waiting to be shredded. He hides himself inside one of the cash dollies being wheeled through the building alongside the legitimate carts of money heading for destruction, letting the Federal Reserve's own routine procedures effectively smuggle him and the money through the building security. At one point, an employee grows suspicious and starts to investigate further, sensing that something about the delivery driver does not add up, but by the time she reacts, Donnie has already vanished with the cash, leaving almost no trace behind. The stolen cash, along with Donnie himself, is loaded onto a nondescript waste management garbage truck, chosen specifically because it can move through the city without attracting any attention at all. It is meant to disappear quietly into ordinary traffic, while all the city's police resources remain focused on the aftermath of the loud, violent decoy robbery happening elsewhere. However, Nick's team eventually identifies the garbage truck as connected to the crew's escape and moves to intercept it. Merriman, Bosco, and Levy, riding together as part of the crew's official escape route, hit a sudden traffic jam and find themselves completely blocked in on a busy street. After warning nearby civilian drivers to get clear, the police open fire, and a massive, chaotic gun battle erupts right there in the middle of traffic, one of the film's longest and most intense action sequences. During the fighting, Merriman manages to kill one of Nick's own officers. In return, both Levy and Bosco are shot dead by police fire. Merriman himself, badly wounded, manages to break away on foot and flee through the surrounding streets. Nick personally chases Merriman on foot through alleys and back streets, eventually cornering him and shooting him through a chain-link fence, wounding him seriously. Nick climbs over to finish the arrest, but Merriman, even dying, bleeding out on the ground, refuses to go quietly. In one final act of defiance, he raises a gun toward Nick, forcing Nick to fire one last shot. It is only implied, never fully confirmed on screen, that the gun might have been empty or non-functional, meaning Merriman may have deliberately provoked his own death rather than surrender. As Merriman lies dying on the pavement, Nick kneels down beside him, and for a brief moment the tone shifts from violence to something quieter, almost respectful between two men who have been chasing each other for years. He dies right there on the street, and Nick is left kneeling beside him, believing, for now, that he has finally won. Nick walks over to inspect Merriman's van, expecting to find bags stuffed with the $30 million stolen from the Federal Reserve. Instead, he finds the bags full of nothing but shredded paper, completely worthless. At almost the same moment, Nick receives word that Donnie has somehow escaped from police custody. This is the first real crack in the story. Nick believed he understood. If the money is not here, and Donnie is gone, then something about this entire operation was not what it appeared to be. Confused and suspicious, Nick drives to the bar where Donnie used to work. On the walls, he notices photographs of Donnie standing together with several members of Merriman's crew, clearly closer to the group, and for much longer than Nick had ever assumed during his investigation. Piece by piece, the picture starts to shift in Nick's mind. Donnie was never just a minor, frightened bystander being pushed around by real criminals. He was part of this from the very beginning, in a much deeper way than anyone realized. Nick asked the staff and a few regulars at the bar simple, almost casual questions about Donnie. How long he worked there, who he used to hang around with, whether he had disappeared before without notice. The answers he gets are vague and inconsistent, which only deepens his suspicion. Standing alone in the empty bar, surrounded by photographs of a man he thought he understood completely, Nick begins to reconstruct the entire case in his head, scene by scene, realizing that almost every assumption he made from the very first day was built on a lie that Donnie had carefully constructed. Sitting in his car afterward, Nick goes back over the details of the investigation in his mind, and the film uses this moment to let the audience mentally replay several earlier scenes with new eyes. He remembers how easily Donnie gave up information during the first interrogation, almost too easily, as if he wanted Nick to know exactly enough to keep chasing Merriman instead of looking anywhere else. He remembers how Levy's rough questioning of Donnie at the hideout always ended the same way, with the crew reassured and moving on, never suspecting anything. He remembers the calm, unreadable expression Donnie wore at the restaurant when Nick greeted him in front of Merriman's crew. None of it on its own looked suspicious. Together, it forms a pattern, a man who was never afraid, never truly cornered, always one step removed from the danger everyone else was facing. This is the central twist of the entire film. It is revealed that Ray Merriman, the man everyone, including Nick, the police, and the audience, believed was the leader and mastermind behind everything, was not actually running the show. The real architect of the whole operation was Donnie, the quiet, unassuming bartender who spent the entire film being treated as the weakest, least important member of the crew, someone who got kidnapped, beaten, and interrogated by literally literally everyone around him, including his own supposed allies. In truth, Donnie had been secretly orchestrating the Federal Reserve heist from the very beginning. He fed Merriman just enough information to let him believe he was the one in control of a grand operation, while allowing Merriman's loud, violent decoy robbery to absorb all the risk, all the police attention, and ultimately all the deaths. Meanwhile, Donnie's own separate secret crew handled the actual objective inside the Federal Reserve, and it was Donnie himself who slipped away with the real $30 million, using the chaos of Merriman's gunfight as perfect cover, almost certainly transferring the cash into a second, unmarked garbage truck that nobody had ever thought to truck. Every earlier scene suddenly takes on new meaning. Levy's rough interrogation of Donnie, Nick's own aggressive kidnapping and questioning of him, the way Merriman's crew constantly pushed him around, all of it was exactly the impression Donnie needed everyone to have so that nobody would ever suspect the truth. The most dangerous man in the entire story was deliberately the one who looked the least dangerous. This twist also recontextualizes the information Donnie gave Nick during the very first interrogation back in scene 5. At the time, it looked like Nick had successfully broken a scared, low-level criminal under pressure and extracted valuable intelligence. Looking back, it becomes clear that Donnie may have allowed that information to reach Nick on purpose, feeding the detective just enough truth about Merriman's plan to keep him focused entirely on stopping the loud, visible half of the operation, while never suspecting that a second, quieter crew existed at all, working for Donnie alone, hidden completely from both the police and from Merriman's own men. The brilliance of the deception, as the film frames it, lies in Donnie's patience. He spent months, maybe longer, allowing himself to be seen as replaceable and weak, absorbing insults, threats, and violence from people who believed they were above him. Also that when the moment finally came, absolutely nobody was watching him closely enough to see what he... Looking back at earlier scenes with this new understanding, the audience realizes how carefully Donnie's escape was engineered. His release from police custody, which had looked like simple bad luck on Nick's part, was almost certainly planned and assisted by his own hidden crew. In the film's final scene, time has passed. We find Donnie far from Los Angeles, calmly working behind the bar of a pub in London, surrounded by the loyal members of his own hidden crew, the people he actually trusted throughout the entire operation. They all appear relaxed, satisfied, clearly enjoying the fact that they got away completely clean with the stolen money. It becomes clear that Donnie is already planning his next major job, a diamond heist somewhere in Europe, but he now understands that he was completely outplayed by the one person he underestimated the most throughout the entire investigation. He caught the loud, violent face of the operation, while the real criminal and the real money vanished without anyone ever truly seeing him coming. The film closes on this bittersweet contrast between the two men. Nick returns to a life that is otherwise empty, his marriage over, his team having lost one of their own in the final shootout, with only the hollow satisfaction of a closed case file that does not tell the true story. Donnie, meanwhile, is shown thriving, calm, and completely unbothered, already looking toward his next opportunity. The final shot lingers on Donnie's relaxed smile behind the bar in London, a deliberate visual echo of the very first scenes of the film, where he appeared just as calm and unreadable while pouring drinks back in Los Angeles, reminding the audience that, in a sense, nothing about Donnie's demeanor ever changed. Everyone around him changed their opinion of him. He never had to change at all.